Watch. A regular family. The Gills. They lived on a farm near La Floresta in Entre Ríos Province. 5 of them, parents and 4 kids. Farming, animals, school, market stall. They had lived there for more than 10 years. Neighbors knew them, saw them every day. But on the morning of January 13th, 2002, everything vanished, immediately, without noise, without explanation. The house remained, food remained, a child's notebook on the table, the door locked, no trace, like no one was planning to leave. If they left, why no passports, no money, no shoes? If taken, why no object in the house was disturbed? This isn't a story of escape. It's the story of a family who lived here for 10 years and disappeared overnight. That morning began like dozens before it. Marta Gill, mother of 4, woke a bit later than usual. She lit the stove around 6 a.m., put water to heat for mate, took out an old enamel pot of corn porridge, and forgot it for a few minutes. The usual burning smell filled the small kitchen. She lifted the lid automatically to keep it from filling the house. On the table lay her squared notebook, a simple school jotter where she wrote not only shopping lists and recipes, but all important farm notes, livestock movements, feed costs, random thoughts. The last page, left open, contained no entries. According to the investigation, the notebook lay exactly where found later, on the table's edge, between an empty cup and a salt shaker, missing its lid. Voices of children were heard outside from early morning. Luisa, the eldest, about 15, was washing a metal bucket by the well. Middle boys, Marcos and Alejandro, chased each other with wooden sticks, pretending to unload goats. The youngest, Juan, about 10, stayed apart near the house entrance, going in and out quickly. Neighbor Alejo Rodriguez testified the barn door creaked around 6:10. He was in his yard, about 40 meters away, and reported the sound as usual, meaning the eldest had already opened the door and gone to feed the livestock. The father, Reuben Gill, was in his workshop attached to the barn, fixing an agricultural tractor, model passed from his own father in the late 80s. He worked alone, tools later found on site. Above the workshop was a sheet stretched as temporary shelter from the morning sun. On a nail in a wooden post hung an old battery-powered radio receiver. Batteries were missing, but the switch was set to on when inspected. In the kitchen that day stood 4 cups, 1 missing its handle, 2 empty, 1 held cold tea. The bread box had 2 broken pieces of cornbread, crumbs around plates, but the dining area was not cleaned. Windows were closed except 1 side window left open for airing. Old curtains with cords were half drawn. Marta later said in a letter they sometimes moved on their own, even without wind. The neighbor's dog, the Unsu family's, was near the fence watching the Gill yard. It was a habitual route. Witnesses noted the dog was silent, no barking. But Luisa said it kept turning its head toward the kitchen as if hearing a sound we didn't. In the school notebook of Juan, the youngest son, a note without a date was later found. Written in a child's uneven handwriting, it read, "Last night, someone stood by the barn. He didn't move." Psychological examination confirmed the note was not dictated and was made before the disappearance. By 8 a.m., the entire Gill family followed their usual morning routine. Farm work, leftover food, household items distribution, and neighbor testimonies showed nothing alarming. All actions followed the pattern of an ordinary day. Nothing indicated plans to leave. Nothing hinted at conflict. On the evening of January 12th, usual activity continued on the Gill property. The last light recorded came from the back bedroom where Juan's wardrobe and bed were. According to the investigation, the window there was left ajar every night. A neighbor recalled, "Sometimes it looked like someone was breathing on the curtain but not moving." The note in Juan's school notebook, written in pencil and placed between math exercises, contained just 1 phrase, I will ask tomorrow why he stood there so long. Who the question was addressed to? Unknown. The barn light was off, but the plug for a portable flashlight was in the socket. There were no signs of packing, trip preparation, or emergency. All slippers and boots were in place, lined up by the door. The kitchen dishes were unwashed. It was an ordinary evening. Too ordinary. The morning of January 14th began with a scheduled check of the cab's condition. Alejo Rodriguez, neighbor of the Gills, arrived about 7:15 to discuss feed leftovers with Ruben, which had to be moved from the old shed to temporary pens at the southern edge. Rodriguez knew the family always woke early, since 6 a.m. footsteps, slamming doors, children's noise were typical. This time, it was quiet. The Unsu dog, who usually patrolled by the fence, was absent. Curtains hung on the windows as usual, but no movement was seen inside any room. The barn light was off. The front door was locked from the inside. Rodriguez knocked twice, then called out, "Ruben," then, "Marta." No answer. At that moment, no alarm, just surprise. He thought they might have gone to the doctor or market. He walked along the facade and peered through the kitchen window. Behind the curtain, a table was visible. On it, 4 cups, 1 spoon, a bowl with unfinished porridge. Dishes weren't cleaned. A mosquito net hung from the ceiling lamp, not pulled tight. A pot sat on the stove, lid beside it. On the table, bread, a piece of cheese, a knife with an unwashed blade. It looked like breakfast was interrupted. Windows were closed, but one, the side window in the youngest son's bedroom, was tilted open, the curtains swaying in the light morning breeze. Rodriguez walked to the barn. Everything there was locked. Silence surrounded the pen. No signs that the livestock had been let out. By the back wall of the house, he noticed a puddle, water from the overflowing trough the children usually carried out after feeding. Judging by its state, it had spilled recently, but was already starting to soak in. Birds, normally circling near the kitchen, were absent. One goose stood at the gate, but was dead. Not torn apart, just lying there with its neck bent. The family pickup truck stood parked, a worn white model with scuffed sides. No keys in the ignition. Inside, a paper bag held leftover bread and a receipt from the local store dated the day before. The son's imprint on the windshield showed the vehicle hadn't moved since at least the previous evening. Rodriguez didn't try to enter the house. He returned home, reported to his nephew, and around 9 a.m. came back with neighbor Unsu. Together they knocked again. After several unsuccessful tries, Rodriguez peered through a crack in the barn door and later said he felt as if someone had just come out of there. Temperature inside the house, measured later, matched night levels. This meant no light or gas had been turned on for at least 6 hours. At 9:40, La Floresta police received the first call. No one is at the Gill family farm. From that moment, the official case began. The first police arrived at the Gill property around 11 a.m. on January 14th. They were Senior Sergeant Armando Ruiz and Duty Officer Juan Perea. They were called by Alejo Rodriguez, the neighbor who first noticed the family's absence. The report noted, "Message, no contact, house locked, uncharacteristic behavior." Upon arrival, the team inspected the perimeter. The gate was open. Locks on the barn and pen showed no signs of forced entry. The house door was locked from the inside, with no evidence of forced locking. The decision to open was made after a second yard check, when it became clear no one had left the house for at least 8 hours. The entry was made through the kitchen door. The old latch lock was broken carefully. The report noted, "The lock yields without force. No signs of external break-in attempts." Inside the house, it was clean. On the floor, traces of normal domestic movement, boot stains, crumbs near the dining table, fine dirt by the entrance. No signs of panic, struggle, or sudden departure. All personal belongings were in place. In the kitchen, a pot with congealed porridge, 4 cups, 1 spoon on the table. Everything looked as if preparing for a normal breakfast. Details in the bedrooms included neatly made beds in 3 of the 4 rooms. In the youngest son's bedroom, the cover was thrown back and the pillow bore a central indentation. In the closet, neatly stacked clothes, nothing hastily removed. In the hallway, a full set of footwear, rubber boots, sneakers, slippers, lined up as usual, according to a neighbor. Family documents in the kitchen cabinet drawer included parents' IDs, medical cards, and property registration papers. Marta Gill's bag with a wallet was under the table, containing money, 53 pesos, a notebook, and a shopping list dated 3 days earlier. The refrigerator was plugged in. Food inside was fresh, some milk not poured into the main container, left open. The pantry held intact bags of feed, not moved to the animals. No interior item was displaced. The television was off, the outlet disconnected. The kitchen radio was switched on but unplugged. Police noted absence of departure traces, no evidence of violent intrusion, no signs of strangers in the house. Animals were without water. Chickens remained in the pen. 1 kid goat died from dehydration, apparently no earlier than 12 hours ago. A handwritten phrase by Sergeant Ruiz in the report read, "The house is not abandoned. It wasn't packed for leaving, it just remained without owners." The internal protocol reclassified the case from search for persons to disappearance of a group under unexplained circumstances. The case file recorded no external violations, departure impossible without shoes, means, transport, or tracks. The Gill family was absent, but the house was alive, as if someone left it for a few minutes and never returned. During the initial indoor inspection, after officers Ruiz and Perea noted the house's overall preservation, attention turned to 1 bedroom, the youngest son Juan's, about 10 years old. The bedroom was in the northern part of the house with a single window facing the barn. This window, the only one in the house, was in the ventilation position. The lower sash tilted up about 7 to 8 centimeters. The sash lock was missing, but no external damage was recorded. The window was opened partially, just enough to let air in. The inner windowsill was clean. No traces of dirt, scratches, or attempts of forced entry were found. However, in the lower part of the window frame, a fingerprint was detected, a faint, incomplete, shifted print, as if someone touched the frame only with finger pads. The later examination failed to reliably identify it, but confirmed the print was fresh, made after the last wet cleaning. Under the window stood a simple wooden bed. The mattress was made neatly, but in the center was an indentation, typical of recent sitting. On top of the blanket lay a child's t-shirt, carelessly folded as if hastily removed. On the floor, crumbs of dry bread, 2 25-centavo coins, and a plastic toy soldier. On the bedside table sat a child's notebook with a cartoon character sticker. Inside were homework notes, Spanish exercises, and 1 blank sheet with 2 lines written in pencil, handwriting uneven and pressured, with no date. I didn't want to look there. He knew I saw. The police seized the note as a personal document. Psycholinguistic evaluation conducted 2 weeks later concluded the text was written by a child in a state of anxiety, but not panic. Semantic connections were incomplete, no signs of external dictation. On the bedroom floor, in the corner, was a plastic toy box. 1 toy, a soft doll without a head, was placed on top, separately from others. Neighbor Luisa Unsu said Juan had strange periods when he'd arrange things in corners and wouldn't let anyone touch them. The window's position drew special attention. According to Marta's earlier letter, "We always close all windows at night, always, even if it's hot." Officer Perea noted in the protocol, "All doors were locked, all windows, except one in the child's room, slightly open." Upon further inspection, a spider web with a tear was found on the external wall beside the window, as if brushed by or reached through. No footprints or pressure marks were found on the ground or grass below. By the end of the first inspection day, the Gill property had been fully searched. No signs of struggle, no indications of a hasty flight. Senior Sergeant Ruiz, responsible for the reports, wrote in the concluding note, "The scene is not chaotic. No before-leaving behavior. Too clean for escape. Too quiet for violence." This statement became the starting point for the first working hypothesis discussed that evening, January 14th. According to the La Floresta sector chief, there were 3 possible scenarios: voluntary departure of the whole family, forced removal from outside, sudden internal breakdown, illness, religious crisis, collective decision. Each had internal contradictions. The flight theory was impossible without transport, shoes, or documents. The abduction lacked physical evidence. The voluntary disappearance didn't explain the remaining money, food, unwashed items, and dead animals. The internal report, signed that day, ended with, "A feeling of temporary absence is recorded on site, but it is not associated with domestic or transport activity." During a second inspection of the youngest son Juan's room, Officer Perea opened the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside were standard school supplies: pencils, an eraser, a textbook cover. Underneath lay a folded sheet of paper. The note was written in plain pencil, undated. The paper was carelessly crumpled, edges worn. On it, a single line: "I didn't want to look there." The handwriting matched Juan's, later confirmed by teachers. Experts noted an unstable line, as if the phrase was written with a trembling hand. The rhythm was broken, pressure uneven. The text was placed at the bottom of the page, as if written standing up. The note was seized and sent for storage in the documentation department. It didn't match any schoolwork, and the context was missing. But combined with another earlier found note in Juan's school notebook, the phrase, "He knew I saw," it began to be seen as a clue, not fiction. That same evening, investigators first used the word anxiety, describing the child's behavior in recent days. On the second day of inspection, while walking outside the house, a junior police officer noticed a depression in the ground, 28 centimeters from the main porch's wooden step. It was a footprint, the only one. Footprint shape: narrow toe, deep heel, size about 43. Depth: 8.5 millimeters. Direction: from the door, diagonally. No similar prints were recorded nearby. Visually fresh, but the ground was compacted, making it impossible to precisely time its appearance. No family member owned shoes of that type. All boots and shoes found in the house had a different sole pattern and smaller size. Neighbor Rodriguez stated, "Nobody was at the porch when I arrived first. No rain traces, none recorded in the past 4 days. No debris covered the print, suggesting it appeared after the last evening movement. The print was unprotected, and by the next day was almost completely deformed by dust and wind. It was not matched to any service boots. No police officer had similar footwear. It remained in the report as a single non-residential print unmatched to environment." On the morning of January 15th, during witness gathering, police checked neighboring properties. The first explanation came from Louisa Unsu, living about 80 meters south of the Gill farm. She claimed that on the night of January 12th to 13th, she woke around 2 a.m. to barking from several dogs. At first, she thought something was chasing in the bushes, but within a minute, the noise abruptly stopped. The same was reported by Alejo Rodriguez. His dog started howling around 2 a.m., but suddenly quieted. This was uncharacteristic. The statement read, "He never just stopped. That night, it was like the sound was turned off." Louisa Unsu's phrase, relayed through a duty officer, was recorded. "Someone seemed to walk there, not fast. Then, nothing. No footsteps, no rustling, no sounds, just silence. Both witnesses confirmed no lights, voices, or movement near the house, but both agreed the animals acted unusually. Police recorded this in the protocol as change in acoustic environment in the area at the presumed time. No signs of intervention or break-in were recorded at that time, but from this moment, the case began to note an immaterial event sign, a complete absorption of sound on the property within a certain time frame. During an internal discussion on the evening of January 15th at the site, Senior Sergeant Ruiz first proposed the formal theory. Possibly the family left the house voluntarily. He entered this formulation into the interim report as a working hypothesis. The basis: no signs of violence, property intact, house locked, orderly household. Almost immediately, concrete objections arose against this version. The vehicle remained in place, no keys found in the house. Documents, including IDs and medical cards, were untouched. Footwear necessary for leaving the property was all inside the house. Fresh food remained in the fridge, with uneaten leftovers. The cattle barn held untethered livestock, unfed animals. The pot on the stove contained congealed porridge meant to be eaten in the morning. Taken together, these points posed a problem for the logical structure of the departure hypothesis. Special attention was drawn to the absence of any form of packed belongings. No bags, no open suitcases, no single item that looked taken along. In a brief exchange between La Floresta Station and the Paraná management the same day, the phrase appeared, formally, not fleeing, but not staying either. The mechanics of disappearance don't compute. During the second inspection of the parents' bedroom, a small paper note was found in the lingerie drawer among folded towels. It was a sheet of paper folded 4 times with handwritten notes, presumably addressed to Mother Marta, but never sent. The paper was yellowed, writings done with a ballpoint pen, undated. Text fragments read, punctuation preserved. I no longer sleep well. He walked in the yard again. I don't know who, but I feel when he is near. The children hear nothing. Reuben says, wind, but I know he comes with no trace. I fear one day he will enter, but he doesn't knock, he doesn't speak, he just walks. The note lacked signature, no envelope or marking. The handwriting matched Marta's samples. Expertise confirmed identity. The date wasn't indicated, but judging by paper type and ink hue, it was presumably written within 3 weeks before disappearance. The letter bore no signs of hysteria. Quite the opposite. The phrases were calm, almost factual. This made the text even heavier. From this moment, the case recorded the first documented evidence of internal family anxiety, not hypothetical, but marked by a family member's own hand. The voluntary departure version was set aside. A reorientation began toward intervention. A second inspection of Juan's bedroom was conducted on January 16th. The focus was on the wardrobe, bed, nightstand, and window area. At first glance, everything remained in place, but Inspector Perea noted the position of items differed from earlier records. It wasn't a break-in or a mess, it was displacement without interference. The pillow that lay in the center of the bed during the initial check was now pressed closer to the edge. The top drawer of the desk was not fully closed. A plastic cup with pencils, previously centered on the nightstand, now stood right at the edge. The plastic floor mat by the bed was curled up at a corner, a difference from the first photo. No signs of entry or forced break-in were found. The window was closed, the door seal intact, but the very fact of subtle shifting couldn't be ignored. The report stated, "The impression is as if someone walked around without touching things. Everything is there, but not where it was." Special mention was made of an object under the bed, candy wrapper, previously unnoticed. It was crushed, slightly damp. On the wrapper were 2 fingerprints, one incomplete, child-sized. The ownership by Juan was neither confirmed nor denied. There were no other children in the house. In the same inspection, investigators noted an item not previously recorded in the room's file, a doll lying in a corner, face to the wall. It was a soft fabric toy, standard size, undamaged. According to a neighbor, Juan had played with it outdoors before, even though at 10 years old this was unusual. The arrangement looked like the result of play, but for the room's general emptiness. The doll lay alone in the corner between the wardrobe and wall. Dust covered it, typical of several hours of stillness. The oddity was the eyes. Pupils faced the wall, and given the angle, it seemed the doll was placed not carelessly, but deliberately. From an expert view, this meant nothing. From investigators' perspective, it became another detail in the feeling. The room wasn't simply abandoned, it looked as if someone entered afterward, not taking or changing anything, but just watching. One junior investigator said in verbal description, "She didn't lie abandoned, but left under supervision." By midday on January 16th, the voluntary departure theory lost ground as a working hypothesis. Too much contradicted the very idea of leaving. Not a single logically completed step. No passports taken, no money taken. All house shoes were in place. Food was being prepared, but uneaten. Animals were left unattended. Most importantly, the timing and actions didn't add up. Food in the fridge was opened, but unused. Animal feed lay by the door, untouched. The last entry in the feeding log dated to the evening of January 12th. Yet by morning of the 13th, calves were without water. Behavioral profiling experts confirmed the disappearance lacked a goal, meaning it didn't lead to travel, avoidance, or escape. It stopped mid-action, as if interrupted from outside. The police summary for the department read, "Either the family left without taking anything, leaving food unpacked, beds unmade, lamps on, or they didn't leave. They simply didn't get up that morning." This conclusion was unofficial, but it sparked a shift in the case's direction. On January 16th, duty officers interviewed Jorge Granado, an elderly resident of Santa Clara Hamlet, living 800 meters from the Gill farm. His house stood on a rise with a partial view of the Gill house's east facade, including the kitchen window and barn. Granado said that on the night of January 12th to 13th, he woke when his dog growled. He approached the window and noticed a light in the Gill house. The mere fact of light didn't surprise him. The family often rose early. But this time, he observed, the light was bright. Curtains in the kitchen were slightly parted, but no silhouettes were visible in the window. He put it simply, without metaphor. There was light, but no one in the house was visible. It's as if the light burns, but the people already left. Granado reported that for 15 to 20 minutes, nothing else happened. The light stayed on. No movement inside was detected. The dogs initially reacted, but then went silent simultaneously. He didn't leave the house. His testimony was recorded and added to the case. Officially, it contained nothing criminal. But investigator Perea noted in his report, he didn't say he saw anything strange, but he spoke as if something didn't fit the village's usual silence. By the morning of January 17th, the on-duty investigative team compiled a second interim report. For the first time, it featured the phrase, "The manner of disappearance does not indicate independent action." From that moment, the investigation admitted the Gill family could have been moved or isolated by a third party, without resistance, without prior traces. This did not mean a classic kidnapping, as there was no struggle in the house, no transport used, no threats or statements made. But in the logic of inaction, the disappearance began to seem organized, as if by command, by signal, or as part of someone else's plan. One investigator described it informally as, "When people leave, something always breaks. When they're taken, something is always forgotten. Here, emptiness, pure, without error." At this stage, the case was prepared for an expanded analytical review. Specialists in rural disappearances joined, including experts in land conflicts, property disputes, and closed family cases. None of these angles were confirmed regarding the Gills. On January 17th at 1347, during a property patrol, Sergeant Ruiz heard a door slam coming from the old barn storing feed leftovers and tools. He said the sound was brief, as if someone sharply shut a shutter with effort. At that moment, 3 staff were on the outer perimeter. The barn was officially locked. No forced opening attempted. Lock was intact. After the slam, Ruiz inspected the door. Lock untouched, no marks or manipulation signs. The window was intact. Inside, silence. At the weather station 6 kilometers away, no sharp wind gusts were recorded. Weather was clear, wind speed 2 meters per second. Such wind force was insufficient to slam the door. No drafts were on the property. All gates and windows were closed. Ruiz wrote in his observation log, "Clear slam, on empty air, no wind." This event didn't enter the official version, but from that moment, staff began continuous watch, noting the slightest sounds and movements, not as evidence, but as background, preventing any version's completion. On the night of January 18th, on-duty officers Ruiz and Moreno noted absence of movement, sounds, or break-in signs. Windows and doors remained sealed. In the morning at 9:20, during a planned re-inspection of Juan's bedroom, a discrepancy with the previous state was recorded. The bed, previously neatly made with smooth sheets and pulled cover, was now creased in the center, forming the shape typical of a seated person. The pillow was on the floor. No accompanying traces, mud, dirt, footwear marks, were found. The door seal was intact. The window was closed. No staff had entered the room before the check. On the bedside table appeared a new detail, a plastic cup with water remnants absent in the earlier inspection and not in the room when sealed. Fingerprints on the cup were partial, of one type, but too blurred for identification. Later, the report included the phrase, "Internal order changed while external integrity of the site remained." After this, investigators began to record changes not as resulting from actions, but as states appearing when unobserved. In the afternoon of January 18th, a volunteer guarding the area stood by the east facade of the house. He was a college student and, by his own account, recorded observations on a cassette recorder for a study project. At the time, he stood with his back to the house, about 15 meters from the child's window. When the recording was played back a few hours later, during the 6th minute, a faint, muffled child's voice was recorded. The context: footsteps on gravel, the volunteer himself, branch creaking, silence. Then a voice close to the recorder says, "Mom, I hear them calling." The tone was calm, quiet, without shouting. The background was silent, no footsteps, drafts, or other noise. The volunteer confirmed that at the time, no children, people, or even dogs were nearby. The recorder pointed toward the fence. He was simply walking, not speaking. Spectral analysis showed no signs of overlay or external source. The voice didn't come through the window. It seemed to be in front of the device, at chest level. The recording was not included in the case, but the investigator made a copy. In his personal note, a short sentence. A phrase said, "Not on that day or in that place." The next day, January 19th, about 8:30 a.m., Sergeant Moreno, entering the house for inspection, noted a smell of burning coming from the pantry area, located by the north wall between the kitchen and bathroom. The room lacked electrical wiring. No light had worked there since early January. The pantry was locked, access restricted. The seal was intact, lock untouched. Upon opening, nothing burned, smoldered, or smoked. The air inside was normal. But at the joint between floor and wall, a small dark spot was found like soot with the characteristic smell of burnt paper or fabric. An expert took a sample. The later conclusion read, No burn layers detected. Source unknown. Characteristic of residual low-density open burning odor. No signs of fire, heating, wires, or candles were found. The pantry had been inspected twice before. No mention of smell in previous protocols. Police did not include the episode in the main version. But within the investigation team, they began to speak of phenomena that aren't fixed but are felt. While documenting the property patrol, one junior police officer took a series of photographs of the house's interior perimeter, including Juan's bedroom window, from outside. This happened January 20th, around 4 p.m. One photo, a black and white shot taken with a Canon service camera, captured the child's window. On the glass, a clear reflection of trees, sky, and part of the fence. But upon review at headquarters, a junior lab technician noticed another fragment in the reflection. A human silhouette at an angle not matching the photographer's position. The silhouette was at the right edge of the frame, blurry but discernible. Height, approximately average. None of the staff on site at the time stood at that point, confirmed by route maps. Comparison with earlier frames showed the reflection was absent. No one was in the room, and the blinds were slightly lowered. The door seal remained intact. No official explanation for this visual fragment was found. It wasn't published or entered into the case. But a copy of the photo remained in Investigator Pereira's personal collection with a short note on the back. A reflection from inside? On the farm, in the pantry among the family's work journals, was a feed logbook. It was mostly kept by Marta and the eldest daughter, Louisa. The last recorded entry during the initial inspection dated to January 11th, but upon re-inspection on January 20th, a new entry appeared on the last page. The handwriting matched Marta's. The entry was brief. Set aside 2 kilograms of corn, not today. The date, January 13th. On the back of this page was the same entry, but crossed out. The paper was clean, with no impression from previous writing. The page was clearly neither torn out nor inserted. The binding was intact. Expert analysis confirmed that the ink was identical to that used in previous entries. The chemical composition was the same. The handwriting consistently matched Marta Gill's. The pantry seal had also not been broken since plating. The key was kept in the site safe. Opening was only recorded during a scheduled check. Investigator Ruiz wrote in his personal notebook, "Either she wrote this in the morning before disappearance, or someone knows her handwriting and used it. Or he left the thought unfinished." Based on the overall movement pattern built from all physical evidence, tracks, distances, soil conditions, a forensic expert from Santa Fe presented a conclusion clearly stating the impossibility of the whole family leaving without leaving multiple traces within a 20-meter radius. No shoe prints, dragging marks, grass damage, fence breaches, or pressed paths. He wrote, "Logically, by biomechanics of movement, the site was not left on foot, neither alone nor as a group." Simultaneously, the technical report noted, lights in the house were turned off manually. The kitchen lamp at the time of inspection was in the off position. The power supply was uninterrupted. The conclusion, someone deliberately turned off the light after no one was left in the house. The Gill family disappearance case, registered under number PT-0402, officially remains unsolved. More than 2 decades have passed since their disappearance. In archival records of the Ministry of Justice of Entre Ríos Province, it is classified as group disappearances under unknown circumstances without confirmed motive or mechanism. The last investigative actions were recorded in April 2004, repeat queries to migration and medical institutions. No biometric, passport, or identity matches were found. No trace of the family was discovered, neither within Argentina nor abroad. All collected evidence, prints, items, documents, after the active phase was completed, was archived by the Provincial Investigative Department in Paraná. The case file is under permanent storage. Access is only granted upon prosecutor's request. The farm where the Gill family lived has been formally listed as municipal abandoned property since 2003. Buildings are sealed, utilities disconnected. For several years, there was discussion about transferring the land for agricultural lease, but the procedure was suspended on the local community's initiative, unofficially due to considerations of local memory. The house is in a preserved state, partially ruined but not dismantled. Locals avoid it. Shattered shutters, remnants of an old antenna, boarded windows, and the front door shrouded in dusty film. Inside remains some furniture, a single aluminum cup in the kitchen, and an old-school poster reading, "Hoy es miércoles." Today is Wednesday. A handwritten date beneath it reads 13 Enero. The village of La Floresta has changed little since then. Those who lived near the family remain, but no one touches the property. No one has ever proposed using the land, neither privately nor communally. On maps, the site is marked as an open, undesignated area. On local schemes, it's simply labeled Gill, and that's all. That's the case. If you have theories, be sure to write in. Thanks for watching.